Let me start by saying this. The vast majority of bad bosses are just garden-variety narcissists. They are self-centered, demanding, and they need to be the smartest person in the room. They are a massive pain in the neck, but ultimately their goal is your admiration. But then there's the other kind. The one whose behavior isn't about ego, it's about execution. The one who doesn't just want your job, they want to watch you bleed out while they take it. That is the corporate psychopath. And if you can't tell the difference, your career, your reputation, and maybe your finances are in actual danger. Think your boss is just difficult? These 7 signs mean you're in actual danger. The statistics are chilling. While clinical psychopathy is rare in the general population, studies show that in high-stakes corporate environments, especially in executive roles, the rate of psychopathy is significantly higher. Why? Because the corporate ladder rewards the very traits psychopaths possess: superficial charm, ruthlessness, and the ability to make high-stakes decisions without the debilitating friction of guilt or remorse. They are built for the job. The critical distinction is motive. The narcissist is constantly fighting a war against their own profound sense of inadequacy. Their toxicity is a defense mechanism. The psychopath is fighting a war for power and control. Their toxicity is a surgical tool. We're going to use the workplace context to spot the signs. The narcissist fires someone when that person threatens their image or publicly points out a flaw. The act is messy, often accompanied by defensive rage, and they'll spend weeks justifying it to anyone who will listen because they need to look like the good guy who had no choice. There is emotional friction in the act, even if it's the wrong emotion. The psychopath fires someone when that person becomes an obstacle to a greater goal or is simply no longer useful. The act is cold, fast, and final. There is no accompanying emotion, no visible remorse, and no need to justify the decision. They simply state the objective fact. You are no longer generating the required utility. Let me tell you about Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark was a psychopath who downsized an entire division. When asked about the impact on the dozens of families, he frowned, not in sadness but in confusion, and said, "Their emotional state is immaterial to the shareholder value creation. That lack of moral friction is the sound of psychopathy in action. When your boss makes a difficult decision, is it followed by public drama and self-justification, or a chilling, flat silence?" Both use charm, but for radically different reasons. The nature of the mask tells you who is wearing it. The narcissist's charm is a performance for an audience. It's loud, demanding, and centered on their own achievements. They need the audience to believe they are brilliant and kind. When the door closes and the audience leaves, their charm deflates into irritability, moodiness, and complaint because the supply is gone. They still exhibit emotion, just negative ones. The psychopath's charm is a tool for access. It's surgically tailored to you. They mirror your interests, listen intently, and seem like your perfect ally. But the moment the information is extracted, or the objective is met, the charm is simply turned off. Behind closed doors, they don't get moody, they get flat. The mask doesn't deflate, it simply disappears, revealing an unnerving neutrality. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah had a boss who was a psychopath. In client meetings, he was flawless, empathetic, funny, and supportive. But the moment the door shut, he'd turn to her with a completely blank expression and say, "File that data. Now." She said it was like flipping a switch. The energy, the human warmth, was instantly gone. He wasn't moody, he was void. Practical test. If you criticize a narcissist, the charm shatters into defensive rage. If you criticize a psychopath, the charm often remains on while they coldly assess the utility of your criticism. They don't mind feedback, as long as it helps them win. Do you see an emotional meltdown when the audience leaves, or an immediate, chilling absence of any feeling at all? Toxic bosses thrive on internal conflict, but their methods of pitting employees against each other serve different masters. The narcissist uses triangulation to create dependency and supply. They will whisper secrets to you about a colleague's flaw, then go to the colleague and do the same about you. Their goal is not to destroy the department, but to ensure that both of you are constantly competing for their approval and attention. They want to be the sole source of validation in the office. It's about hoarding attention. The psychopath uses calculated conflict to create chaos and gather data. They are setting up a highly competitive, fear-driven environment where employees are focused on destroying each other, not questioning the boss. This chaos is a smokescreen, and the conflict gives them data on who is weak, who is easily bought, and who is a potential threat. Their goal is total control and operational efficiency through intimidation. Let me tell you about David. David's boss, a psychopath, didn't just put two managers on the same project. He told them the budget would only fund one position 6 months from now. He forced a fight to the death. Why? Not to feel important, but because he wanted to see who would resort to the most ruthless tactics to win. He was testing their moral limits for future exploitation. New insight. The narcissist is hoarding of attention. If the office goes a week without any conflict, the narcissist will actively create drama to bring the focus back to themselves. The psychopath, however, is happy to let the chaos simmer if it serves their long-term purpose. Is the internal conflict about who gets the most praise? Or is it a high-stakes, ruthless competition with an actual, painful consequence for the loser? This is a classic workplace toxic trait, but the reason they do it tells you everything. The narcissist takes credit because they desperately need the validation that accompanies success. They deflect blame because they cannot tolerate the shame of failure, which threatens their perfect image. The action is defensive, emotional, and often involves public, theatrical self-justification. The psychopath takes credit because it provides resources. They deflect blame because they are protecting their reputation as a flawless operator for the next manipulation. It's instrumental. If they deflect blame, it is often onto a specific, weak target they have been grooming for failure. Let me tell you about Mark. Mark was managing a department that missed its quarterly goal. The narcissistic CEO immediately called an all-hands meeting to tear into the staff, but he spent the bulk of the time talking about his own genius and how he had warned them. The deflection was loud and defensive. A psychopathic CEO in the same situation would have quietly identified the weakest director, provided that director with a small severance package, and leaked a story that the director was solely responsible for the failure. The psychopath's deflection is surgical and designed to maintain long-term, unquestioned authority. Key distinction. The narcissist is worried about what people think of them right now. The psychopath is worried about maintaining their operational integrity for the long run. When the blame lands on someone, is it messy and chaotic, or is it surgical, final, and perfectly placed on the person least able to fight back? How someone behaves under extreme stress is the most reliable tell of all. The narcissist handles pressure poorly. When a crisis hits, the external validation they rely on is threatened. They often collapse into a volatile mess of panic, rage, and blaming, a defensive meltdown where they become useless to the team. Their internal emotional system is overwhelmed. The psychopath handles pressure with chilling calm. Since they do not experience the fear, anxiety, and moral stress that paralyzes normal people, they become highly focused and efficient in a crisis. The crisis is simply a complex problem to solve, without the messy interference of feeling. The higher the risk, the calmer they become. Let me tell you about Ms. Chen. Ms. Chen was a consultant on a massive product failure. Her boss, a suspected psychopath, remained utterly unperturbed when the news broke. While everyone else was scrambling and panicking, he calmly sat down, opened a spreadsheet, and began calculating the exact legal exposure and the most efficient scapegoat. He saw opportunity where others saw ruin. Scientific insight. This relates to the underactive amygdala we discussed. They don't get the same jolt of fear that drives emotional people to panic. They remain in the cool zone. Practical observation. If your boss is the only person in the room who seems to be enjoying a crisis, you're not dealing with a capable leader. You're dealing with a psychopath who is thriving on the high stakes and the control. When the sky is falling, does your boss melt down, or do they become unnervingly serene? The nature of their aggression is a perfect mirror of their inner wiring. The narcissist uses reactive aggression. Their aggression, be it verbal abuse, yelling, or passive-aggressive sabotage, is always triggered by a perceived slight, a challenge to their authority, or a loss of supply. It is a messy, high-emotion, defensive fire designed to restore their ego immediately. The psychopath uses strategic aggression. Their aggression is only deployed when it serves a concrete purpose: to gain information, to establish absolute dominance, or to remove a barrier. It is cold, calculated ice. They don't yell, they deliver a threat in a calm, flat tone, because the threat is a tool, not an emotional release. Let me tell you about Agent P. Agent P was interviewing a known corporate psychopath. The psychopath had lied about his past. When confronted with irrefutable evidence, he didn't raise his voice. Instead, he simply stated, "If that information leaves this room, I will ensure that your family loses everything." He delivered the threat as if he were reading a weather report. The aggression was entirely instrumental. Key difference: the narcissist's aggression is about feeling better. The psychopath's aggression is about getting the job done. When your boss attacks you, does it feel like a chaotic, panicked tantrum, or a surgical, premeditated strike designed to achieve a measurable objective? This is a subtle yet powerful tactic employed by high-level psychopaths to ensure long-term compliance in the workplace. The narcissist may do favors for you, but they do them loudly, and they immediately demand public praise and gratitude. The repayment is admiration. The psychopath will do you a major, unsolicited, and often life-altering favor in secret. Get you a massive raise, save you from a past mistake, or give you highly valuable insider information. They ask for nothing in return at the time. They are building a debt of obligation that is far more binding than money. They know that when they later ask you to lie, commit fraud, or betray a colleague, your ingrained human sense of reciprocity will compel you to say yes. Let me tell you about Kevin. Kevin's boss was a suspected psychopath. Early in their relationship, the boss covered up a minor ethical lapse for Kevin, saving his career. 6 months later, the boss called in the favor, demanding Kevin sign a false legal document that made Kevin complicit in a major fraud. Kevin felt he had no choice, the debt was too heavy. The tactic: psychopaths prefer to control you through entanglement rather than brute force. If your boss has given you a massive, unearned gift or saved you from a significant error, understand that the bill is waiting, and the payment will be in the currency of your integrity. Has your boss done something for you that feels disproportionately large, and you're struggling to understand why? That is the hook. We end with the most terrifying sign of all, and the only safe way out. The narcissist rarely plans your downfall. They plan to survive their own downfall. Their attacks are usually reactive and spontaneous. The psychopath engages in the long con. They will plant seeds of your destruction months in advance, sending subtle emails about your instability to HR, logging small errors you make, or even setting you up for failure by assigning you to an impossible project. The downfall is not an accident. It is a project with a timeline. The ultimate tell. If the smear campaign against you seems too effective, too well documented, and too flawlessly executed, you are dealing with a psychopath who has been preparing for this day for months. You cannot fight a corporate psychopath, you can only outmaneuver them. 1. Reduce utility. Stop providing them with anything useful: information, drama, gossip, or special favors. Become a boring, predictable clock puncher. 2. Increase friction. Start a private, secure log of every single interaction, promise, and deviation from policy. Send factual summary emails to them after meetings. As discussed, I will be proceeding with X. Force them to create a paper trail. 3. Find the back door. Your immediate goal is not justice, it is escape. Discreetly cultivate relationships with trusted allies in other departments who can confirm your narrative and provide safe passage to a new role, or help you find a new job entirely. Do not burn bridges, build new ones. 4. The silent exit. Once you have a new job, leave immediately and silently. Do not lecture them. Do not provide 2 weeks' notice if you fear retaliation. Let your attorney or HR handle the final paperwork. Your survival depends on making the cost of pursuing you higher than the benefit. You've got the signs. You know the strategy. Now use the cold, hard facts to protect yourself. Would you like me to generate the supporting content package based on this script?